I would probably, where this team is right now, I would probably always lean youth. Always. I mean, that's where they are. I want to develop the young guys.
You got me, Jody McDonald. I got Jeff Kerr by my side today, as you can see by his smiling face, or at least the picture thereof. John McMullen is here. He'll do the guest spot thing, and then he's got to go make sure he doesn't have COVID. And we're all rooting for you, JM. First things first, Jeff Kerr, you okay?
I don't know if that's true, by the way, Jody.
I am.
Hopefully.
Jeff is. I don't know about any of our loyal listeners or viewers, but yeah, we're still pulling for you. Jeff Kerr, how are you? Good to get you back on the show.
Oh, pretty good. The NFL keeps buzzing. Stephon Gilmore just got released by the New England Patriots. What a crazy league, John.
Yeah. Two big names on the street in 12 hours. Eagles fans' heads must be exploding. Get that guy. Get that guy. You got to improve the defense. I talked about this a lot, really going back to the spring. And, the Eagles had gone through this cycle of, we got to rebuild. We got to get younger. We got to get more cost effective. And they never showed the discipline to do it. They have to this point. Let's see if it continues. I think it'll continue, but, they see big names and boo. Bring that guy in. Bring that guy in.
All right.
They're on the street for a reason. Jalen Smith especially.
Let's get more specific about those two guys. Jalen Smith released by the Cowboys yesterday. We all watched the Eagles-Cowboys game, and Jalen Smith didn't make a whole hell of a lot of plays. I saw a great stat last night that they're giving up like more than 1.5 yards per play when Jalen Smith is on the field as compared to when he's off the field for the Cowboys, and they've been slowly cutting his playing time back. They had an evaluation. He's just not the same player he used to be. We know the Eagles have a need at linebacker, or at least my eyes tell me that they do. Is Jalen Smith the answer? He is a guy who you could claim. I remember we talked last week about the linebacker was available, who you pointed out, John, was a vested veteran, so there was no claiming involved. If you wanted Jamie Collins, you just had to convince Jamie Collins for whatever price. I don't think the Eagles or anyone else is going to actually claim Jalen Smith. Do you? And if he gets to free agency, tell us why the Eagles shouldn't make a play for him, John, since their linebackers are playing as poorly as they are.
No, I don't. I have to double check. I don't. Jeff probably knows. I think Jalen's vested by this point. I think he came in, I don't know, 2017 maybe.
I think it was 18.
So he's
vested. Become a vested veteran even while you're still on your rookie contract?
He's not on his rookie deal. He signed a big money extension.
Okay. All right. Then I'm wrong
again. But either way, yeah, I mean, up to the trade deadline, vested veterans don't have to go through waivers, so they just hit the open market. And then after the trading deadline, they have to go through waivers. But, yeah, I mean, he's too expensive. Nobody's going to pick up that contract. The Cowboys have been trying to trade Jalen Smith really dating back to the summer, and they haven't gotten any takers. It's interesting because, yeah, you could make two arguments. Is he better than what the Eagles have? Yeah. I mean, yes. But, his biggest weakness as a player is probably stopping the run. And that's what the Eagles want to improve. So this is probably just a more talented Eric Wilson. So I don't know. I think you're sort of swimming in the same pool, and you're going to spend more money because I imagine, he's not going to get near what he has on his contract, but he's still going to generate some interest probably amongst contenders around the league. And I would say the same for Gilmore to a greater extent. I don't think the Eagles are ready for players like this. I think they got to stay disciplined. They can't go down that road. I don't think it helps them long term. And this is about, to me, it should be about long term more than short term fixes.
Yeah, speaking of Gilmore, and this more ties into Steve Nelson than anything else. I don't think Steve Nelson has been playing as poorly as everybody has portrayed him to be. What's your thoughts on that, John?
No, I thought Steve has been pretty much fine until the Kansas City game. And again, I would encourage people to put the context of Kansas City in there. I mean, it is Kansas City. It is Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. I said, the quickest fix for the Eagles is the simple reality that Patrick Mahomes is no longer on the schedule moving forward. You don't got to worry about it again. Now, if Sam Darnold does it, then you got a problem. And then I think it's fair to start panicking and doing some of these doom and gloom things. I saw somebody, Dave, you ran from KYW, and I'll give him credit. He found Jonathan Cannon's Wikipedia page. Somebody changed it already. It went nuts on that. I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes. Look, I think they played poorly. You got to do better than they did. But it's not like this. They don't do this to other people. This is the best and most explosive offense in football. That, oh, by the way, was probably coming in kind of angry because they were coming off a bad game. So I just think there's such an overreaction. There always is, but certainly against the Kansas City Chiefs, yes, Steven Nelson didn't play well against Tyreek Hill. Join the club. That's a big club. That's not an exclusive club. It really isn't.
Tyreek Hill eats almost everybody for lunch. You are 100% correct there. Granted, I'm with you that I don't think Gilmore has a place here in Philadelphia. Not that he wouldn't upgrade the Eagles and make them a better defense, but if you've got your two starting cornerbacks, he's surely going to get starter money. Maybe not the money that he was scheduled to make this year as well. But I think there will be a team that's going to be willing to try and move some contract money around to be able to get Gilmore in. So be very interested to see where he lands. But I don't think it's here in Philadelphia. Do you think he's still got game, John? He's had injury issues this year. I thought he was very good last year, not as good as the year before when he was Defensive Player of the Year, but I still think he's got a lot of game left. Is he a guy who can land somewhere else and make a big difference with a team that has bigger needs for him than, say, the Eagles do?
Yeah, I think he can still play. Whether I don't. With corners, it's funny. We saw the same thing with Jalen Ramsey, who was, considered to be, if not the best corner in the league, certainly amongst the top 3 or 4 in Jacksonville. And all of a sudden, he had a bad year, and things started to go negative. And he turned it around with the Rams. I think the same thing can happen with Stephon Gilmore, but there's another. I mean, I think from Gilmore's perspective, there's going to be a lot of interest when he gets healthy, and he's only got a quad injury, so he should be back relatively soon. But I think there's going to be a lot of interest. I think there's so many teams that need corners in this league, and part of it's going to be from his perspective. He's going to want to go to a contender, and he's going to have options to go to a contender. Yeah, I still think he's at worst a top 20 corner in this league. So I just, you'd love to have him from a football perspective if you're the Eagles, but I don't know if you can get in that mix just from the standpoint if he's going to want to go to a contender.
John, one of the things we talked about, we talked about in the preseason, I think you guys talked about this week, was the schedule. And one of the things I looked at was, okay, maybe Carolina's a winnable game. Well, now they're 3-1. Do you still view this as like a must-win game to get that 2-4 start we kind of talked about, or at the very least 2-4?
Yeah, I mean, Jody and I were talking about this yesterday. I guess it depends on your goals. If you're talking about playoffs, yeah, I mean, this is pretty close to obviously not mathematically, got to bring that out, as a must-win game. But you never want to lose games in your conference. I said to Jody, I mean, Kansas City, you never like to lose in this league, but who cares if you lose out of conference and you're not going to be in the mix to be the number 1 seed. Ultimately, it's not going to hurt you when it comes to tiebreakers. But, I mean, I don't think this is a playoff team. I don't think they're going to push. I think Dallas is, the whole theory about them potentially being a playoff team was the NFC East being terrible again, which was a possibility.
especially early in the season. It looks to me like Dallas is going to be a good team. Not a great team, but a good team. They're not going to be 500. They're not going to win the division at 8 and 9. So I don't think the Eagles are going to be in the mix to be a playoff team, a wild card. But you never know. I mean, the Bears got in last year. I think they were 8-8. So you're probably there's an extra wild card now. So you're probably going to be at a 500 team, and if you're thinking playoffs, you better win this game because you've already lost. Carolina will be one of those teams in the mix. So if you're down there and you're both in that 500 range, obviously you're going to lose the tiebreaker. So you never want to lose in the conference, and the Eagles did it against San Francisco as well, who will be in the mix, probably in that wild card mix. So it's not good.
JM knew after you got off the air yesterday here on Birds 365, you were heading over to the Novacare complex because it was coordinator day, and you heard from both Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. Gannathan, to use a Coach Sirianni phrase, doubled down on we don't have a system, we don't play a specific way, we stay fluid, and we just want to put our players in the best position, play in and play out to make good plays. Were you cool with his stance? Was it excuse-making sounding to you? What do you think of Gannon when he got under the Klieg lights yesterday to face the media here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, it didn't go over well, which, people are, again, overreacting. No, I mean, I think he's telling the truth. The part and it's very difficult for any coach is, he's protecting his players. And that's just what modern coaches do. They're never going to throw their players under the bus. They shouldn't throw their players under the bus. But some handle things, I think, a little bit better when it comes to towing the line and saying, look, we got to get better here. We got to get better here. We got to do this better. I think the Eagles coaches, and they're young and inexperienced, are having difficulty towing that line in a city where people expect you to hold players accountable, and that's one of Nick Sirianni's core values. So, he doesn't have a scheme. He's more multiple. I think it's interesting because Jody knows I'm a Jim Schwartz guy. I'm also a Jonathan Gannon guy, though, so I like them both. But, one of the criticisms Jim Schwartz had was that he wasn't multiple enough. Now they have somebody who's more multiple, and they don't like that. All they want is blitz and aggressiveness, blitz, blitz, blitz. Go blitz Patrick Mahomes. Go blitz Patrick Mahomes with Alex Singleton. I don't know. It might work on Madden. I'm not a video game guy. It ain't going to work on the field. I can tell you that. So the Eagles' game plan was to force the Kansas City Chiefs to go the length of the field, long drives, in an effort that something would happen, a false start, a holding penalty. You know how this league is, over-legislated. To go 13 plays without making a mistake in this league is really difficult, maybe more difficult than ever before. The thing the Chiefs do better than anybody else is bang. 80 yards, Tyreek Hill. It's over. They're scored. The Eagles did. They carried out their plan for the most part. Long, lengthy drives, force them to go underneath till the very end. But they were never able to make the play on the third down to get off the field. The few times they had Kansas City up against it, third and long, you had a Josh Sweat offsides in one case. They were the ones making the mistakes. I thought the plan was sound. I think that's what you should do against Kansas City. They just didn't execute the plan.
John, one of the things I've been really concerned about this defense, and we talk about the linebackers all the time, but it's just the inability to stop the run at this point. I'm not knocking Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he's really coming to his own, but he had 100 yards. The Chiefs had 200 yards rushing in total. It seems like this is just going to be a recurring trend for this team all year.
Yeah, I mean, we Eric Wilson. Anybody who saw him play last year knows he was one of the worst run defenders in the league from the linebacker position. It's not Alex Singleton is not this big Jeremiah Trotter type linebacker. Now, part of it is the modern NFL. You see what's going on in Dallas with Jalen Smith. Well, one of the reasons they're cutting Jalen Smith is obviously Micah Parsons, but also they're playing Keanu O'Neal at linebacker, and he's back. Jaylon Kerr, they're playing a lot at linebacker. These are former safeties, those hybrid players. So when the Eagles drafted Jacoby Stevens, a lot of the league is going this way. And I've been waiting I thought it would be Bill Belichick. I was waiting for opposing offensive coaches to say, okay, you're going to put a 220-pound guy at linebacker. I'm going to run the football.
Right.
I think you're starting to see that. And, yeah, that's a concern of mine because Andy Reid doesn't want to run the football. And he just said, well, I'm going to run the football because you guys can't stop it. At Dallas, it didn't concern me because Dallas wants to run the football, and that's part of their philosophy. With Kansas City, it's more concerning because they don't even want to run it, and they ran it with ease. And so that's a concern.
Speaking of running the football, we've got the Carolina Panthers coming up on Sunday, and although they did get beat last week, Chuba Hubbard did make some hay in that backfield. Sam Darnold made some hay with his legs running the football, specifically in the red zone. Is this another team that will take advantage of the fact that the Eagles just don't have tackling linebackers?
Well, I think you have to at this point. It's on film. I think everybody's going to try, and I think Christian McCaffrey's going to be back. So that's going to be a really, really difficult. That's arguably the most well-rounded running back in football. I mean, he runs routes better than most receivers coming out of the backfield. So he's always a tough matchup. A Chuba Hubbard, somebody like that, that shouldn't concern you, but anybody has to concern you when you're the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, at this point, I'm on record saying I got to play TJ Edwards and see. You're going to give up some coverage things, and but you're playing a lot of zone anyway. And then I don't know where he is health-wise, but I've been saying this as well. When he is healthy, if he is healthy, and he's playing limited on special teams, I'm throwing Davion Taylor out there. Why? Who cares? Why not? Let's see. At least he's got the physical skills from an athleticism standpoint to do some things. I do think they have to make a change at the linebacker position. And I hate to pick on the guy, but it's got to be Wilson first. And then, to be honest, it's everybody loves Alex Singleton, but I mean, it's just not working at this point.
John, you and I kind of had the same opinion on the whole Darius Slay fiasco, which I thought was overblown to begin with. And I'm like, well, let's see his stats, because when I rewatch a game, I'm like, I don't think he played bad at all. And then, it comes out, oh, okay, he was only targeted 4 times. And now, I guess this is a 2-part question here. What did you think of that? And 2, do you really think, maybe this week the Eagles should kind of have him shadow DJ Moore a bit?
Yeah, they did it a little bit against Hill, and I was surprised. That was my one major criticism of Gannon, because they did it for a short time, and we were sitting in the press box, and they said, "Oh, Darius is traveling now," and then they stopped, and it worked. I don't know if it worked because, it was just easier to throw against the other guys, which is a big part of it when you have the reputation of being a good corner, or in other words, they would have ultimately got back to Tyreek Hill, or it's probably a little bit of both is what I'm trying to say. But bottom line is he was successful for a short period of doing it against, arguably the most explosive player in the game. Yeah, I mean, if DJ Moore gets hot, yeah, I think you got to think about it. And I think they got to do that more for a couple reasons. One, Slay likes to do it. And I think that's my other criticism of Jonathan Gannon. I think some of these veteran players are starting to waver. Fletcher Cox, most notably, and Slay kind of publicly. And I've been talking about this all the time. Look, everything is great when the games are either aren't being played or you're winning. So, but when you start to have some failure, and guys are going to look at young coaches and go, "Who the heck is this guy? What? I've been a 5-time All-Pro, or I've been this, I've been that. I've had all this success. They're not using me correctly." I think we're starting. I'm not saying we're even down that slippery slope, but I think we're at the top of the hill and people are looking down. And if this continues to go in a negative fashion, particularly with people like Fletcher Cox and Darius Slay, and you saw some of that frustration from Slay coming out on social media. That's something to keep an eye on.
Agreed. Again, I'm kind of beating up on Jonathan Gannon here, but I was pretty disappointed by the way he handled himself yesterday. He was asked, why don't you guys play more dime, which means 4 cornerbacks on the field. We know they're in nickel a lot because that's basically their base defense with a minimum of 3 cornerbacks with Devontae Maddox on the field. Haven't done much dime work so far this year. And he kind of gave an obstinate answer of, well, we're just not a dime team right now. When there was an obvious answer to give, are you watching us give up yardage on the ground?
I know.
You want me to take a linebacker off the field and put on a secondary guy when we're getting gashed for 200 yards on the ground? I guess that would be throwing some of his players under the bus, but he just came off as a guy who didn't know what he was talking about. And I'm sorry, at the early stages of your career, when you're asked legitimate questions, you got to have legitimate answers.
Yeah, I agree with both of your thoughts there, Jody. I think people, I defended Gannon on that because I think people took him out of context. He said we're not a dime team, and he said for now, which is an indication of exactly what you said. They need more linebackers on the field, not less linebackers. You could argue they should play more base at this point if they're going to play that much zone. So I agree with you there, and then he should have handled it better. But I will say this guy played defensive back. His history is with he's a secondary coach, corners coach. He knows dime deep. Like people are saying, he doesn't know what a dime deep. I'm like, come on, people. I mean, keep the criticisms legitimate. But you're right. He could have handled it better. But they need more run support, not on the field, not less. I think the question was about Kansas City because of them gashing, and people think, I don't know if it's recency bias because Hill got them late deep. But again, overall, I think, and Jeff, you're a stats guy. I think they're still number 1 in the league in fewest explosive passing plays allowed.
Yep.
I mean, they've been successful limiting explosive passing plays. Now, the other end of that sword is they're getting gassed in the running game. So if you're tops in the league in limiting explosive plays, why do you need more defensive backs on the field when you can't stop anybody running the football? I actually tried to lead JG down that path by saying the explosive plays thing. And he admitted, yeah, that's hurt us in the run support. So, but people are going to take what they see and they don't like and blow it out of context.
John, the one thing I looked for in Sunday's game, and I got the answer by the third quarter, was how Nick Sirianni and how Jalen Hurts are going to respond. And if I had to, after the Dallas game, and if I had to grade them, I'd probably give them an A just based on the game plan and how Hurts adjusted, how Sirianni adjusted. What were your thoughts on those two in Sunday's game?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they played well offensively. I thought they got back to a lot of things they did well in Atlanta. I thought that was positive. But then I'm going to say the same thing I said about the Eagles defense. I look at the opponent. It's the other end of the spectrum. I mean, that defense is just terrible. It's terrible. It really is. So how much of it is a successful game plan playing well? How much is it just playing against a bad defense? Again, probably a little bit of both. I mean, I'm to the point where I can't consider Kansas City a legitimate Super Bowl contender with one of the best offenses I think I've ever seen because the defense is that bad. And it's not like they need to get to top 10. They need to be just competent. And they're not competent. Now, Frank Clark wasn't out there, but he wasn't playing well when he was healthy. They have issues on the back seven, a lot like the Eagles. They just don't have playmakers. Mathau is the big name, but he's not playing well. Sorensen, I can't believe he's still playing, but he's still playing. I mean, they have corner issues. They have issues all over the place, and the Eagles took advantage of it, and they deserve credit for taking advantage of it. I think it'll be a tougher test in Carolina. Not great, but they've been solid defensively. And it'll be similar process as we go throughout the season. But I do think when you look at what happened with Lane Johnson 2 hours before the game, could have been a disaster on the offensive line. I thought they had a good game plan to protect that offensive line, and they weren't an issue at all.
I was going to say that I do consider Kansas City a Super Bowl contender. I think they can 40-point their way all the way back to the big game again.
Yeah, they're going to have to, though.
Whether you have to or whether
the only problem I have with that is look what happened last year. You run into one game, you have an injury on the offensive line, you have the quarterback stubbing his toe, and all of a sudden, 40 becomes mortal. It's just tough to keip scoring 40 or 40 or 40.
There's a team that they're playing this week that has a really, really, really good defense in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's about timing on that individual day. And obviously the timing wasn't good for Kansas City against Tampa Bay. I think the Chiefs had the better football team if they were completely healthy,
right.
But they weren't. And the quarterback wasn't healthy. And all of a sudden you lose in the big game. I just think, everything's got to align correctly. Now, if they have just a mediocre defense, I don't think everything has to align correctly. I think they could do enough on the defensive side of the ball to help out. I don't know if they're capable of that right now.
It's more difficult, but I really do think it's doable because they are just so scary on offense. All right, you mentioned Lane Johnson and the fact that it was a late scratch last week. We were hoping for more information this week, or at least the possibility of Lane Johnson returning for the Eagles this Saturday. Their bookend tackles, Mailata, again, doing the math on whether they would or wouldn't put him on the IR, hoping that he comes back this week, Lane on the other side. Any hints yesterday as to what the Eagles' offensive line is going to look like come Sunday?
Well, you know what it's going to look like if Lane is not able to play, and we'll know better if he's not at practice today. I think that's going to be a clear indication this is going to be more than a 1 week thing. And certainly the way things shook out last week wasn't an issue. So they're not going to make any changes. It's with the exception of Jordan Mailata. We have to see health wise if Jordan's back. Obviously, if Jordan is healthy, he's going to play at left tackle. But everybody else, Dickerson at left guard, Herbig right guard, Driscoll right tackle. That'll be the way they go. It's interesting because they didn't put Jordan on injured reserve. So if you're on IR, that means you're going to miss 3 games. He's already missed 2 games. In theory, they thought he should be back by this game. So we'll see. That's something to keep an eye on.
John, what the left side of the offensive line, I mean, Landon Dickerson has had his issues, no doubt, but I thought he played a little bit better on Sunday. I think Andre Dillard's been playing pretty well, for my expectations over the last 2 games or so. What are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, I thought Landon was a lot better on the left side. He's more comfortable there. That's more natural for him. He's played more on that side. I think he's been really good as I watch as a run blocker, still struggling a little bit as a pass blocker. But the Eagles run so many RPOs, a lot of it is just run blocking. And I thought he played a lot better. So that was really positive. I think Andre's been good. The problem is, and I talked about this with Jody earlier in the week, is that, he's gotten kind of lucky, to be honest, his first 2 games, in that DeMarcus Lawrence wasn't available for the Cowboys, and they would have flipped sides with him. And Frank Clark wasn't available for the Chiefs. So he's gotten a couple breaks, but I think you're right, Jeff. I think he's played well. People look at the penalties. Nick Sirianni absolved him of those. Those were not his fault, the illegal downfield penalties. That's the football not coming out on time on an RPO. He's doing what he's supposed to do. So overall, I think he's played pretty well. And that helps the Eagles because so many teams need offensive linemen. We talk about this all the time. And trade deadline's coming up November, I think, 2nd. All of a sudden, you build this guy's confidence back up. You show teams around the league he can play a little bit, and maybe you get a mid-round pick for him, and you get something back in return. Because long term, the Eagles have made their decision. It's going to be Jordan Mailata. So I think it's been really helpful not only for Andre but for the organization. He's played pretty well.
John, last thing, and then we'll let you go get tested. I know your guys' job is just that much more difficult these days because you don't have access to the players. You should be able to go into the locker room if you want to hit a specific player with a specific question for a specific story. You could, and you don't have the capabilities of doing that. So you got to try and get your information other ways. And I thought maybe Gannon could be a source to try and find Ryan Kerrigan, whether the thumb is still an issue, whether he can make plays, whether he's trying to fight through it because he sure as hell isn't producing when he's getting his snaps in game. I want to know because I thought it was a good signing and said so here on Birds 365. Said that's a good move by Howie Roseman. And to this point, he's done zippity doodah. There is, I guess, an explanation because of the thumb injury that he had, but nobody is giving us any inside information or insight as to why Ryan Kerrigan all of a sudden looks like he shouldn't be getting any snaps for the Philadelphia Eagles. When are we going to find out what the deal with Ryan Kerrigan is?
Yeah, we talked to Ryan. I mentioned that he's admitted the thumb is an issue. He can't grab, can't really, hand placement, hand use is very big for defensive linemen. So that's part of it. And then I said on the show that I don't think Gannon has been using him correctly. I've seen way too much 5 technique for Ryan Kerrigan. I should have put him in that category of Slay and Cox as veteran players who maybe aren't being used like they want to be used. I think that's part of it. And then, yeah, you have to – that's the part nobody can – I don't even think Ryan Kerrigan knows. I mean, he might just be physically done, and he's just not the player. It happens quickly in this league. We just talked about 2 big-name players getting cut in the middle of the season. And I think I mentioned that to you earlier this week, Jody. I mean, people think people live in a stasis in the NFL. Because you were a star once doesn't mean you're a star in perpetuity. And Ryan Kerrigan was a great pass rusher in this league for a very long time. But the buyer beware on this is always nobody knows better than Washington. And they said, all right, we're fine. Go move on to a division rival. Maybe we should have paid more attention to that. Similar with the buyer beware on Jalen Smith. Well, if the Cowboys thought he could play, he'd be on the Cowboys still. So I think you got to be wary of stuff like that. And yeah, he might be at the end of the road. It's a fair question to ask.
The thing that I would have asked if I were Harry Roseman of myself was not so much the fact that the Redskins decided to move away from him, because they had young guys who jumped
But I
up.
say Redskins, I got to say
Oh,
Washington
shoot,
football
the Washington
team.
football team. Yeah, you and I both. Apologies. We'll both put $1 in the tip
Yeah.
jar. Yes, they've got a better read on him probably than anybody else. They've got him every day. They've got film on him. It does make sense. But any one team can make a mistake.
Yeah.
Ryan Kerrigan signed for what I thought was a below market value amount, which means it wasn't just one team who didn't think he was as good as he used to be. It was basically the other 30 teams in the National Football League, with the Washington football team included, that said, yeah, we're not going to pay this guy. We just don't think he has it anymore.
In turn, Washington may miss Ryan Kerrigan because their pass rush has taken a massive hit since he left.
Yeah, that's true. They haven't been generating much, but I don't think the Ryan Kerrigan here couldn't help them much.
No.
But they've been a disappointment, especially considering the talent they have on the edges. They should be generating a little bit more pressure. But I mean, yeah, at some point, I think the bigger issue, and Jody mentioned, look, from a contract standpoint, there's two sides to that. The Eagles didn't invest much, so they can move on pretty, no pain whatsoever. And they got to make a decision. Is it worth putting him out there if he's not producing? Or, maybe you can get Teron Jackson some extra reps, Milton Williams some extra reps, and get those guys up to speed a little bit more quickly, get those startup costs out of the way, get them more comfortable playing in the NFL. So I think that's the bigger decision for the Eagles. And I would probably, where this team is right now, I would probably always lean youth. Always. I mean, that's where they are. I want to develop the young guys.
And we'll see if that is something that comes into fruition over the next couple of weeks. JM, know you got to run. May you pass your test. Thanks for hopping on with us, buddy.
All right. Thanks, guys.
John McMullen, usual co-host here on Birds 365, doing the guest thing because he's got to do COVID testing today for the upcoming road trip, going down to Carolina to watch the Eagles take on the Panthers. All right, we'll come back, talk more about the Eagles and their matchup with the Panthers. I got Jeff Kerr by my side today. Second hour, we'll have Clark Judge, who has been on the show before, National Football League writer, does a great job, host on Talk of Fame. We'll get Clark Judge up here in hour number 2. Jody McDonald, Jeff Kerr coming back here on Birds 365 next.